Hello, everybody. Welcome to CrimeDoor Live. I'm Erica. I am your host today, and I'm so excited for all of you to be here with us. This is the first time that we've had a guest on CrimeDoor Live, and I'm beyond excited to introduce to you all our first guest, Dr. Dana Anderson, and she is a forensic psychologist. Hi, Dana. How are you?
Hi, Erica. I'm so excited to meet you too, because I've been watching all your work and I'm so impressed with how much work you put into every day. It's just, I love what CrimeDoor is doing and I love what they stand for, and I'm so happy to be a part of it.
We're so excited to have you here. I really appreciate that. I know we've had you on CrimeDoor TV, which is our TV show that is streaming on Roku and Tubi. I so enjoyed seeing your conversation there, and I was so excited that we would be able to have a live streaming conversation with you here. I know that forensic psychology and the job that you do is something that has always fascinated me, really from the time that I was a kid, right? So I'm so excited to speak with you, but we really want this to be a discussion. So all of you watching at home, drop your questions for Dana. I have plenty. I'll take up all the time if I need to, but we want this to be a conversation. So your burning questions for a day in the life of a forensic psychologist, that is what we're gonna kick off with today. So I would love to start off with just a little bit about you, what you do, what is involved in your job, and what does a day in the life look like? I assume it's not the same thing every day.
Yeah, what is a forensic psychologist anyways? So forensic means in the court system or criminal justice system. So I'm a psychologist in the court system. Now, typically we think of the criminal justice system like criminal court, but there's also family law court, civil court, there's even CPS has court. So I actually work in all those different court systems. For the most part, I do criminal cases. And so my office is the jail. So I go to the jail. Yeah, pretty fancy. So I go to the jail and I interview defendants that are in custody. Sometimes they may be out on bail, and I'll meet at their attorney's office. And so this week I drove to one county jail and I interviewed a few defendants, and then I interviewed a defendant that was out on bail and I went to his attorney's office. And then, so basically what a forensic psychologist does is we answer the legal question, and it typically has to do with their mental health. So are they competent to stand trial? Now that's one I get every week, and that's the most frequently asked question. And so everyone has a right to know what you're being charged with.
Of course.
And to be able to communicate with your attorney, understand your charges. So that's what I'll assess. And sometimes I meet some people with some severe limitations or developmental disorders, or they have a mental illness and they're psychotic or delusional and they don't know what's going on.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I recently, interesting case, I interviewed a gentleman about a year ago, and he was from a jungle where he didn't know how to read or write and like counted with sticks. And I had an allow interpreter, and I realized he was never going to be competent, you know, clearly. And I let the court know, not only is he not competent, but he never will be. So, and he had a number of health conditions and then going into dementia now and all different things. So these decisions are important because we're not going to send him to the state hospital if he's not going to get better. So what do we do with him? So I actually just got a call from the family the other day, and they let me know that he got out of jail, and they wanted to thank me for the treatment that I gave him and to help understand where he was coming from. And anyway, he was crying on the phone and telling me thank you, and it was just really heartwarming. So you don't always know what brought someone to be in custody. So you just really want to keep an open mind. I see all kinds of people from different situations. And so a forensic psychologist, we answer the legal question and we write a report. And part of that is giving a diagnostic formulation. So if he has a developmental delay, he has schizophrenia, he has a number of different impairments. So that's the information that I give to help the judge make decisions.
That is fascinating and so important, because I think we're realizing in so many day-to-day aspects of life, mental health plays a huge role. So something that I'm very curious about, we've seen kind of the situations that you are in real life on different TV shows. There's, TV shows like your Law and Order or your Criminal Minds, or that show Lie to Me. I believe he was a forensic psychologist. Is it anything like those shows? Is it, when you're in these situations in real life, is there any comparison to what we might see in a dramatization, or would you say it's completely different?
What I do is much cooler.
Obviously.
I'm serious, but you can watch those shows and sometimes I'm like, yawn. My day was way more interesting. Like
I believe it.
It's true. I have the most fascinating conversations. And even just 2 weeks ago, I spent 2 hours talking with the defendant, like about why she shouldn't kill her dad. And yeah, I mean, we talked about it for hours. She was there for another crime. Anyways, you can have some wild conversations, and I just keep it real with them, like, yeah, well, it's still a crime, and these are your consequences.
Right. Wow.
And I have met the most fascinating people from all over walks of life, from just with, it just makes you really appreciate your life. And not everyone has the same capacity. Some people have some severe limitations and mental illness, or live on the street, and, they're in and out of jail committing crimes, and they have a severe mental illness. And it's really sad to see them in those situations, because honestly, they're more likely to be victimized.
When you said that it makes you appreciate your life, I literally got like a jolt of goosebumps, because the fact that you are in what some people may see as a very dark, scary situation and environment day to day, but that is your takeaway. That's incredible. It's extremely inspiring. So thank you for what you do. I want to get to a couple questions here that we have rolling in. So the first one, why does DNA take so long to come back? I don't know if you have anything to say about that. And that's another one that, like, on the TV show, it's like an hour later.
Yeah, well, that is a good question for a forensic scientist, because forensic in the legal system, so the scientist would be taking that DNA sample and how that evidence comes into play for solving the case. So that's actually not something that I'm involved in. And the the wheels of justice can be slow, and there is a backlog, and that is a real problem. And we need more people to go into this field, even forensic psychology, because there's not enough of us. And that is one of the reasons why there is a delay in cases and processing the DNA.
I think that's why we're so excited to have you on here, because I've so enjoyed with CrimeDoor engaging in a community who is so fascinated by these cases and these stories. And just in the past couple of days, as we've talked about having you on, there have been people who said, that's my dream job. I'm so fascinated by it. So as far as encouraging people, maybe especially women, to pursue this line of work, we so appreciate hearing your feedback. Another question for you: what led you to this specific profession? That's one that I had noted too. Was there a case that got you fascinated in the world of crime and true crime, or what led you to being a forensic psychologist?
Well, I always admired lead female roles on TV, because at the time they weren't real. They were fictional characters, like Jodie Foster, who played Clarice Sterling on Silence of the Lambs. And it's like, so for the first time, you could see yourself doing something that you thought wouldn't even be possible. And so it's kind of like a fantasy. Well, that would be really exciting. And then it's like, well, you could actually do it. And so I don't think I would have gotten the idea about being a woman and going into forensic psychology if there weren't these characters on TV and movies that were lead female roles that I could look up to and like make believe at first that I could do it, and then be like, yeah, I'm going to do it.
That's amazing. I mean, that also speaks to how important representation is, even in fictionalized media that we consume. It makes it possible. And especially then having conversations like this, people can learn the steps that they take to accomplish this. And that actually leads me to another question we have in the chat here. How much schooling does it take to become a forensic psychologist?
Oh, I know this can be a painful answer. And I know everyone wants to take the short route and just make money and, start an OnlyFans account and just do short-term solutions. But the reality is, education is an investment, and it takes time to learn a skill set. And so if you get your doctorate degree, you have your associate degree 2 years, your bachelor's 2 years, your master's 2 years, your doctorate, throw in 5 years. So you're 10 plus years. And so it's, if, you make a very conscious decision, if this is what you want to pursue, and know why you want to pursue it, and stay dedicated and steadfast to the journey, and then you can get through it. I, every semester, printed out every class, and I would highlight each one each year. Only 5 more years, you're like, so it is a long journey, but time still passes, right? And now time still passes anyway. And now I'm in a better position to help people. And I'm so glad that I did pursue my education, because I'm in a better position to help people.
It's incredible. Somebody else asked a question that is actually one that I have on my list here too. So being physically in these situations, how often have you felt threatened by a client, or have you ever had a client become violent with you during your interview process? I was even curious about the physical layout that you have with these people, wanting to obviously treat everybody as a human being, have a conversation that is authentic, but knowing that I assume this can be a possibly hostile environment sometimes.
Yes. Man, there's been a lot of close encounters. So I worked in a hospital for 4 years, and that was in the moment, suicidal or homicidal interventions, physical interventions, 4-point restraints, and people trying to AWOL, assault, or attack you. And so we'd have code grays all the time where you dropped everything you were doing and you ran and you intervened. And I would use my words and, negotiate. And then I have backup. And then physically, sometimes we were trained to physically move patients where they needed to go and restrain them or wear spit masks and keep yourself safe.
Wow.
And yeah, I've worked in parole where I had people just out of prison, pretty psychotic, wanting to stab people. And yeah, I've talked, I've had some really raw situations, but I think best thing you can do in this situation is sometimes people think they know so much because they're intelligent and they know more about the situation, but I approach the situation like I'm open to listen and understand and hear what's going on. And I'm, you don't want to show up like you're the person. They really, most of the time, to be honest, all the patients I've seen in the psych hospital would always say to me, the most common thing they'd say, I just wanted to be heard. And so part of negotiation was hearing them out and then negotiating for safety. I have been attacked twice by females. One of them tried to stab me with scissors in my office, and it was before I had a video camera in there, and I twisted her around and physically moved her out of my office. And then security came and we put her in a safe room. But yeah, I mean, you got to have really strong and clear boundaries with these individuals. When I worked in jail, I had a 6'4" bodyguard deputy that went with me everywhere, to the jail cells, everywhere. And so I always had him by my side.
Wow. And I feel like this is a job, just some of those experiences, it might be hard to separate. So what about your job and these situations how has it affected your life outside of the jail, outside of work, or how you interact with the world?
Well, it definitely just working. I've worked in the jail or worked inpatient. So there was a constant threat for an attack. And so you're hypervigilant, your sympathetic nervous system's on all the time. You're hypervigilant. So it can definitely, be accumulative, that type of stress you're carrying around all the time. And it does make me quite aware of my environment all the time, no matter where I'm at. I'm checking things out, and I'm always mindful of my safety.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question here. Can you speak a little bit about some of the most memorable cases you've worked on, whether they be those fascinating, memorable conversations or cases where the outcome was shifted by the determination that you were able to make, just cases that have kind of stuck with you, maybe even shaped the way that you do your job moving forward?
I've had so many interesting cases. But one time I flew to Atascadero to interview a person, and he had murdered someone and cut them up.
Wow.
Dismember the body. I was interviewing him, and so I like to ask questions where I find out more about what they were thinking and feeling at the time of the offense. In this particular situation, I was evaluating him for readiness for release in the community. Yeah. something people need to know. These people do get out.
Wow.
Especially, I know. So one of the questions I asked him as he's explaining what he did, he strangled this person out and kills them, right? So I said, well, what were you thinking? Because I want to know what he was thinking and what he was going to do next. And have to like walk me through the process, before you get to the point where you cut someone up and you hide all their body parts. Is this psychosis? Is this psychopathy? Like, where are we at with this? Where are we at? But I remember him saying that he said he opened the window and he said, he cried out into the dark and he said, I am no murder. I am no. And so I said, well, then what did you do? And he goes, well, then, like, he got a knife and started cutting her up. So he was just telling himself, this didn't happen. And now I'm going to get rid of it all. So he walked me through the whole thing, which was really interesting. But it was certainly during our conversation with the table between us, it's like, wow, we met under different circumstances. Like,
right.
He is he's dangerous. And my job isn't to invoke any of this anger or aggression at me, but it's like, I can tell them about the program. I'm not there to get them to be mad at me or thinking that I can offer them something that I can't. So I always end up having a really good conversation with them and shaking their hand and thanking them for their time. And there was another interesting time at a state hospital. I I saw a man who had molested many, like, 5-year-olds children. And so I tried to think of questions I could ask him that would be, that he'll answer, really open-ended questions, right? You never want to ask questions that are closed, like yes or no. Like, that's boring. Like, I really want to know, how does this guy, is he a pedophile? Is he ever going to be safe? Is this a mental illness? What's happening? And I said, how do you think 5-year-olds have sex? Like, do you think, and basically he was saying that they consent and they just think of it differently. So it's important to ask questions where you can see where their thinking is off and get them comfortable to telling all the reasons why. And then he went on to tell me how if he was released, he would go do it again. And so,
wow,
it's important to make them feel comfortable when talking with you, because you want to know. I'm not there for judgment, because I'm not. Wow. My moral compass is different. It's not the same as theirs, and that's okay. I'm there to assess dangerousness to society.
Wow.
So it really, when you get someone to open up and tell more about who they are, you really do understand the risk that they may pose.
Absolutely. I feel like the control that you have to have over your physical reactions to these things, like the way that you're sitting there having a conversation about something like this, and they're just explaining it like, yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? I feel like along with the science and the psychology of what you do, just learning how to almost, without enduring the trauma and PTSD too much, put yourself in their shoes to try to understand in order to keep them off the streets if that's what's necessary. I mean, that has to be such a feat in itself.
Yeah, you want to see it through their eyes, the world. Like, I can see, I think that takes a while for people to get to that point. But I remember I worked for parole for a while, and all my guys they'd stab so many people, and they were always trying to stab. All we did was talk about how not to stab someone on the bus there to come see me.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't want to stab anyone. Like, I drove all the way home. I had a 2.5 hour commute, and I would just drive in silence and really think what it was like to just be walking down the street with the knife in your pocket, and any wrong thing that happens, like they just want to stab them. I'm trying to get them not to, and to really put myself in their shoes and like try to talk to them through their day. When it was yeah, but it was, it's really amazing to see when you are able to help people not do these things and keep people safe. And there's some wild stories for sure.
Yeah, your skill set is so complex and so valuable. So again, thank you for so much that you do. We have about 5 minutes left here. So this is a question that I always ask people, whether they're members of the community and advocates or experts within this world. So true crime is compelling to many people right now, right? It's fascinating. There are so many shows and documentaries. So how do you think this community, whether it be advocates, creators, people who consume the content, to people who are professionals, how can we do good for these cases for victims and survivors?
I would say, let's not glorify these perpetrators, these serial killers, and, making it glamorous. And that is not the message I want to send. Let's highlight honor the victims, but the professionals that are working on the ground, and the investigators, the cool forensic psychologists we're trying to prevent violence. And I would ask everyone, what are you doing to help with this problem of violence? And if, there's a lot we can do, but I think so much I could say about this, but everyone, if they just take part in some way or another of helping reduce violence or educating the community, that's something I do. And I want to prevent these horrific crimes from happening. And I definitely want to move away from glorifying these serial killers and giving them this fame. And that's dangerous. I don't like that at all.
Agreed. And that's what you're doing every day for communities all over. So we so appreciate the work that you do. Before we hop off here, is there anything else you would like to share with the community about what you're working on, where to find you?
Well, I'd love to be an inspiration for anybody that is interested in getting into this career field. I know I did the same thing. I interviewed psychologists, and I got information, and I'm here. I provide information on social media, TikTok, Facebook, and I answer questions. I'll do live stream, and I'm here to kind of just tell you what it is like. And so you can kind of have a really good idea. Not everyone has to do the stuff I do. There's different places you can work, but I'm happy to, sometimes there's just some misinformation about what forensic psychologists do. So I'm here to kind of clarify that and share what I do. And I would love to get more people in this field. So I'm here to educate. You can find me on psychologydoctor.com.
Amazing. And I think you will be what those fictional roles were to you. You'll be an inspiration to people to pursue this. And we so appreciate you joining us here for this conversation. I hope you'll be back, because I know there are so many things we could talk about. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you for what you do every day. It's incredible. And it really is an inspiration to all of us.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Mhm.